Welcome to another DCS tutorial. This time we are back looking at the mission editor and seeing if we can make your wingman a little more helpful. As you probably know, the radio menu lets you select from your flight or your wingman, giving you control over a standard 4-ship, which is 2 flights of 2 aircraft. From there, you can get your wingman to do all sorts of great stuff, like attacking ground units, ships, proceeding with the mission as planned, etc. But in reality, in the air-to-ground role, your AI will do one of two things. Head back to a previous waypoint, which you've already passed, and continue the mission as defined in the editor, or more likely, start attacking any SAM sites that it sees in the area. And if they do happen to attack some armour and a SAM site appear, they will just get shot down. Now, I'm not going to be able to fix all of your wingmen woes, but at least we can give you some flexibility and control of what your wingmen are going to do. And we're going to do that by making sure you don't have any wingmen. Instead, what we're going to do is create some groups which look and feel like your wingmen. So let's start by jumping into the editor, and we can do some flying later on to test it all out. Okay, we're in the editor and we're going to set something up that looks like a typical 4-ship. We have set our player group as a 1-ship, our pseudo wingman as a 1-ship as well, and our second element as a 2-ship. And if we wanted, we could even set up a 3rd or 4th element to our flight. I've given them a group name and unit names to ID their flight positions, which will make life easier later on. So I am 1-1, my pseudo wingman is 1-2, the element leader is 1-3, and the element wingman is 1-4. We can't quite do as I'd like with the call signs, so I've set myself as 1-1, my wingman as 2-1, the element lead as 3-1, and the element wingman as 3-2. I have set both of these groups as a task of close air support, and in doing so it's added a default CAS action. This action, if left, would mean that as soon as you choose to let the AI do its own thing, that would probably involve attacking a SAM site or getting shot down by one. And the only friendly aircraft we actually want to see shot down are tankers. The same is true for other default actions, be that anti-ship or whatever. We're now going to get both of these groups to follow us as flight leader, just as your normal wingman would do. To do that, we've set both groups to follow my aircraft, and we can set a formation by setting these various parameters. I could set this to change mid-mission using a triggered action, but it's probably not worth the effort here. I've also set them to return to base on bingo fuel automatically, and also when out of ordnance. I would always recommend removing the gun pod from AI Harriers. If they're out of bombs or missiles, they will usually orbit around firing a single burst until they inevitably get shot down. If you do need a gun pod, then make sure that you have a way of stopping them, such as a task to return to base when out of bombs or missiles. You can also see on the map that I have a couple of shilkers in a group and a separate group with a SA-8 and a truck as a single group. And over here we have 2 groups of armour, 1 tanks and 1 IFVs, and 2 groups of artillery. If we look at our wingman, we can see that I've created a set of triggered actions. and we would create as many as we feel the mission requires. So for example, a seed mission would not need a task to attack armor. Here I've created more than I need just for this demonstration. First of all, we have a searching zone, specifically set to search for surface-to-air missiles only. Next, we have a searching zone for AAA. The third entry is attack unit, and that specifies the SA-8 itself and not the truck. I've also set this to only attack using anti-radiation missiles. You should be aware that you can only specify a weapon with certain tasks, such as attack unit or group, but not with tasks like searching zone. Next is an attack group, and this is targeting one of the two artillery groups, specifically the 300mm MLRS and not the 120mm guns. This entry is to search and destroy armor. This should engage either one of the two groups, one being tanks and the other IFVs, and the AI will decide. This action allows us to force the unit to return to base. Effectively, what it's really doing is setting a specific waypoint, and that waypoint being the one on the egress home. The last but one entry I've called rejoin, and that is simply a follow command, and this will force the unit to rejoin the formation. And as per the initial setup, we can set the formation parameters as we wish, or even set up multiple entries just like this for different formations such as trail, line abreast, wedge, etc. Finally, we have attack primary. Again, this is really a go to waypoint command, and in this case sets the AI to fly to the waypoint where the ground units are, and then it'll continue as per the editor. This might be useful, for example, if you as flight leader want to take out a newly detected SAM site, leaving the second element to attack the primary target. Of course, you can use as many or as few as you need. You could maybe add orbits, refueling, or whatever you feel the mission needs, and simply amend the radio menus to match. As you can see, I've set exactly the same triggered actions for both flights, but you don't necessarily need to do that. If, say, the flight lead were carrying JDAMs and the second flight were carrying outside arms, so you might want to customize them as required. So let's take a look at the triggers. And here we are. As you can see, the first trigger is set at mission starts. Each of the actions is a radio item add, and the name corresponds to one of the actions we've just seen. So search and destroy for the SAMs, for the AA, attack the SA-8 or the artillery, and so on. I've done them in the same order, just to make it a little bit easier to keep track of IDs. And I've also prefixed them with the name, so starting with my wingman, which is 1-2. And then we've duplicated all those entries for the flight lead, which is 1-3. Each of these has a unique flag with a value of 1, so we can run through from 1 through to flag 16. The triggers in yellow control the actions of the wingman and are based on the radio items we just looked at. All are very similar, but with some important differences. As you can see, each one is a switched condition and therefore is repeatable. And the condition is a flag with a value of 1, and matches the flags we set up in the previous radio trigger. So the radio item to search for SAM sites sets flag 1 to a value of 1, and that matches this switch. There are two actions for each, and one of them simply sets the flag value back to 0. We could have used true and false instead of 1 and 0, but I might add some functionality later so numbers can give some extra flexibility. For this trigger, we have a second task, which is an AI task push. And from there, we have selected the triggered action, which we created earlier to search for SAM sites. The other yellow triggers follow the exact same logic, but with one difference. For the entries which are search and engage, that's the SAMs, AAA and Armor, I have used AI task push. For all of the others, I have used AI task set. This is important and I will explain why later on. The triggers in green follow the exact same principle as those in yellow, but the condition and action applies to the second element rather than to the wingman. Now you might have noticed that some appear to be missing, which they are. I've actually removed them because the radio menu only has 12 rows, which are F1 to F12, and 2 of those are taken by default. So I've only left the ones in which I'm going to actually use in the demo later on. 10 entries is probably enough for most missions. Here I've actually created more than I need just as a demonstration. However, we can work around this limitation by using contextual menus, which I may cover in another video. Contextual menus will allow an almost unlimited amount of actions. And that's about all there is to it. Now, I'm sure that many of you have tried similar actions with regular AI groups and had miserable results. So let's take a quick look at some of the things that you can and can't do with the AI. There are 4 types of task: perform task, start en route task, perform command, and set option. Most of these involve the AI doing something now, and as you usually want them to do it now, we use the AI task set option. Tasks such as attack group and attack unit will be actioned at any range and work very well. However, it does rely on you defining a target in the editor, so randomness can be a problem, but not an insurmountable problem. An AI task set will generally not work well with an en route task such as search and engage in zone. All will be well if your wingman can see a target, but more than likely he won't, and so what will happen is your wingman will disappear and next be seen when you land or in a ball of fire. For en route tasks, it's typically much better to set them using the AI task push command. And as your wingmen are following you, as soon as they detect a target as defined, for example, a named unit or vehicles in a zone, they will spring into action. Of course, if your wingmen are not actively following you, they are likely to just disappear as well. In my missions, I tend to set the second element with an AI task push as we fence in to search for random SAM sites around the primary target. So as soon as we get mud, they leap into action. For en route tasks, the range that the AI will see targets varies and is typically up to a maximum of 15 miles with a T-pod and 6 miles without. But as I alluded to a moment ago, SAM sites can be engaged as soon as detected on the radar warning receiver, so that depends on the radar and the alert state. The benefit of en route tasks though is that it allows you to engage random or unknown targets, and because you can effectively preset the action, you don't always need to be reaching for the radio menu when it's kicking off. With the AI detection limits, we could fudge a workaround. If, for example, we wanted the second element to continue and attack the primary target whilst you wanted to intercept an inbound fighter, we could set a waypoint near to the target area and order the second element to that waypoint, and from there instigate another trigger to perform the attack. I think that just about covers everything that we need to, so let's get into the aircraft and see how it all plays out. So we're now airborne, and as you can see, our wingmen are all following me as regular wingmen would do. This is the flight wingman, and there we have the element leader and the element wingman. Welcome aboard, and we're about 50 miles from our target. So we're immediately going to set our wingman to attack the artillery. So we'll bring up the radio menu, select F10 and then F4. So our wingman 1-2 attacks the artillery. And there he goes. And we're going to get him to rejoin straight away so we can prove that the action can be repeated. You can see that he's responded immediately, but it will take him a little while to actually get back into formation. I'll just fast forward a little bit while we ingress in. We are down to 36 miles, so we will now prove that the actions are repeatable by again selecting F10 from the radio menu and then F4. And immediately he's responding, and he's now going to attack the artillery. The wingman's on the way, so we're going to get the second element to attack the armour. So that's F10 and F10 again to select Search and Destroy Armour. As expected, there is no reaction as this is a searching zone task and the AI needs to be able to detect a target, which it cannot yet do. So the current situation is that we have our wingman en route to attack the artillery and our element lead primed to automatically attack any armour which he detects in the defined zone. We're currently at 30 miles, so we're about 15 miles away from that happening. We have mud at 11 o'clock, which is an SA8. None of our flight has engaged it, so we will order our wingman to do so. So we're going to select F10 again and then F1. I could have selected F3 there to force an attack on the SA8 using sidearms, but I wanted to show that the AI will attack an en route task as soon as it detects a target, and it did so at almost 30 miles. But that range would very much depend on the radar detection range and its alert states. In your missions, you might want you and your wingman to attack the primary target, and you could have the second element primed with an en route task to engage SAMs as soon as you see any mud, and they will then engage them without any interaction. If you don't pick up any SAMs, you can then retask your second element on your run-in, and they will join in the attack as well. We're now at 20 miles, so we're going to bring up our T-pod and find the ground targets. This is where we'd often ask our wingman to engage ground targets from the radio menu, expecting to attack what we have targeted, only to find that they piss off in another direction. So we have the howitzers, the MLRS, and we've got the IFVs and the tanks as well. That's 15 miles, which is about the maximum range we can expect to detection using the T-pod, but it can be much less. And there they go. I think that was around 13.5 to 14 miles, which is quite good. I'll just loop around the element lead and we can follow him in on his attack. You should expect the AI to fire Mavericks at a maximum of about 8.5 miles. And there they go. Because this is an engaging zone task, we couldn't specify a weapon, and unfortunately the AI will usually fire a standoff weapon first, but he will follow in with his rock eyes. A quick check up on our wingman, and he's still inbound to the SA-8. So it looks like our wingman has now fired a sidearm. And there go a pair of rock eyes from our element lead. We've destroyed a few tanks and the SA-8, so let's get our wingman to join the fray and attack the artillery, which is F10 and then F4. And he's responding straight away. That looks like 2 kills from Mavericks and 1 from the Rock Eyes, but there's probably a few damaged vehicles down there as well. Our wingman is rolling in to attack the artillery. And rifle. I should point out the combat mix of Laser Mavericks and Rock Eyes aren't conducive to a single attack run, as the Laser Mavericks aren't firing forget. There goes the element wingman with his rock eyes. As you can see, rock eyes aren't hugely effective against main battle tanks. But I'm not too worried about that, that isn't the purpose of this tutorial. And there goes the second Maverick against the artillery. I'm going to cut forward to my second element, who, if you noticed, are fitted with gun pods. One burst and it missed, so pretty useless. I hope that you agree that this massively expands upon the effectiveness and control that we have over the wingmen, and it opens up many other possibilities as well. That wraps it up for this tutorial, so thank you for watching, and if you have learned anything, please hit like and subscribe, and if you have any comments, good or bad, then please do let me know. But for now, I have an Amazon parcel to deliver.